Hey everyone, welcome to Bridge Stories. This is our new podcast giving people space and time to tell their stories of encountering God and being changed by Him. We hope you're encouraged by these stories and also that you leave excited that you know a lot of really awesome people a little bit better. So sit back and enjoy. All right, here we Barry Case.
Yes.
It's good to be here with you.
Thank you.
I've known you for a lot of years, and it's a real honor to sit and just hear your story. And there's a lot of things I know about you because our families are connected, and I've lived life seeing you, admiring you. But there's so many things about your story that I don't know. And so tell us about you, Barry. Tell us about what life was like, and specifically, where'd you grow up? And tell us about those early years.
Well, I was a baby when I was born.
Fantastic.
I was born in the same hospital that my wife was,
Okay.
only she came a year and a half later. It was in Linwood next to Southgate. It's called Lingate Hospital. We lived in Linwood until I was 5. Then my dad moved us to Big Bear because he got a job as assistant fire chief at George Air Force Base as a civilian. They had regular crew members from flight crews that did the firefighting, but they were this guy, my dad and this guy were the chiefs. So we were in Big Bear from the time I was 5. My dad was killed April 14th, 1954, when a jet plane hit his truck, killed him and his partner.
How old were you at that time?
I was just 9. I had broken my leg that winter, and I had just got my cast off.
Wow.
And I never got to see him.
Wow.
So that was a real shock. Then a year later, our house burnt down. So we...
10 years old.
Yeah.
House burns down.
Yeah. My brother was 14 and a half. We moved into... My mother was a server in some of the nicer restaurants that were in town, and she had met a guy that owned a chinchilla farm. And
I don't know why that's funny. I've never been to a chinchilla farm, but
it was beautiful. So he had rooms for the people that worked for him, but when they were out of season, they were raising these chinchillas, they had plenty of room. So we moved into the chinchilla farm, so to speak, for a while, and it was an experience at that age, seeing these animals. And
to milk the chinchillas or anything?
No.
What was your chore?
I didn't do anything. I just went to school, and when that was over, it was 1957. We left and came down to Downey,
Okay.
and we came to Downey, and we lived in Downey for 2 years. I got in a whole bunch of trouble, 6th and 7th grade.
Well, so wait, rewind a little bit, because I'm really interested in what it was like growing up in Big Bear. Because most people just go to Big Bear to ski or visit, but you were a local. You knew the place. What was that like?
It was fantastic, to say the least. It's some of my best experiences. My best buddy, Donnie Cooper, was the son of we were Cub Scouts, and his mom was our troop leader. And we were very, very close, Donnie and I, and didn't keep in a whole lot of contact after we left. But yeah, I skied and broke my leg skiing. I did the typical stuff, broke my arm on the ice, broke an ankle, ice skating in a pond. Mm-hmm. Probably lucky I didn't go through the ice, So those little things that kids do, and it happened to them. I went through all of that, and then
Pretty much roam free as a kid.
Oh,
You go
absolutely.
hiking in the forest, and
absolutely, we would hike and go away all day long, and the phone system then were party lines. You didn't have cell phones, or you couldn't go to a payphone and dial mom. They weren't around like that.
Yeah.
And it was pretty free lifestyle, pretty different. We were very poor. Most of our clothes came from Christmas time when our relatives would buy us clothes or come up to visit and and bring stuff. So I went through a period of necessity
Yeah.
growing up. So my mom just couldn't make it, couldn't afford it.
Fort Big Bear. That's what brought
yeah.
you down to Downey.
Yeah.
It was you and your brother?
Yeah, me and my brother. And then my brother at this time was 17. He was playing football at Downey High, and I was going to a junior high called West Junior High. I went there the first year they opened, and I graduated from there. But by then I'd gotten a lot of police trouble.
That's
And,
interesting.
Yeah. And so my mom said, because she's working all the time.
Yeah.
She said, I can't leave you. My brother left, got mad and left, and moved in with my grandma in Linwood. So it was just me and my mom. She was traumatized after my father was killed, and so when it came to holidays, she went into her bedroom and slept. So when Christmas came, she took her 2 weeks, and she was in the bedroom, and I was there. And if my brother came by and was gracious enough to pick me up, take me over to my grandma's house, then I had something going on. Otherwise, it was just me and the boys in the street. So I was always in trouble. So
Did that kind of thing affect you throughout your life when it came to Christmas or holidays or whatever
yes.
else? It
Oh,
just,
yeah, especially birthdays.
oh yeah.
I just can't handle a birthday.
Yeah.
And I've had a hard time with Christmases and Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. As you probably know. Anyway, so she was having such a hard time with me, she moved to Linwood near her parents, where I would go every morning before football practice, and I played football at Linwood High School.
What position?
Tackle. I was a pretty big tackle in 1961 and 60.
What was your size? You were
200 pounds, 6'2".
Yeah.
But that was big then.
Yeah.
So then I met Jan, which is a mistake for her, and fell in love with her. So my senior year, I didn't play ball at all.
Wait a minute, I got to rewind.
Yeah.
How did you meet Jan? What was that all about?
Wednesday night Bible study.
Oh, okay.
She was sitting in front of me, and I was sitting with a friend of hers and a friend of mine. Judy, what was her last name, Jan? Remember Judy? She had a convertible. Anyway,
Judy with the convertible.
Judy was a convertible. She says, "Hey, let's go get ice cream after Bible study." So Jan's sitting in between her, and I'm on the passenger door because I'd lost my license.
That's a story.
Too many tickets, at any rate, so we get our ice cream. We're driving somewhere, probably back to Hollydale to get my car, go home. And so we get there, and Judy pulls in the parking lot. And I looked at Jan, and I said, "You're going to be my girlfriend?" She looked at me and said, "No, I don't think so. You don't have a choice." And that she met Barry. So the poor gal was intimidated into dating me.
Yeah.
And then it went on and on and on.
So I just have to ask you, because you met her
At
at a
church.
youth group.
Yeah.
So if I go back to Big Bear, go back to your childhood and things like that, was church a part of your life? Was faith a part of your life? Or when did that actually come into your life?
Well, let's talk about that. I had an uncle who was a Church of Christ preacher. Mm-hmm. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was a Pentecostal minister, and his wife was a Church of Christer. So you got way into the spectrum there.
Yeah.
So most of my uncles were Church of Christ, but my mom was more evangelical because the church we had up there was evangelical. And I got baptized there. I was visiting my uncle and got baptized there. And I was visiting, I think I got baptized at the church Jan and I were going to. Everywhere I went, everybody wanted to baptize me. So I really didn't know God, and I studied the Bible. I didn't know Jesus Christ at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had no relationship with the man called Jesus.
Yeah.
I just had no doubt about God.
Right.
You know, and by the way, I'm an American. I eat apple pie. I love my mom. I salute the American flag. I'm a Christian.
You go to church.
Yeah, and I go to church. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of people think, is because they're going to church. So I'm 17. I'm still in high school. And my mom gets a letter from the Superior Court of Los Angeles. This judge says, you will on this date and time, you will remand your son at this location, which was up in East LA, and he will be under the authority of the California Youth Authority. He's going to go to what you call juvenile prison.
Wow.
Or, and it's very specific, the bottom of the letter said, or you will bring me his induction papers into the Marine Corps. Very specific, Marine Corps.
Not Army, not Navy, Air Force,
Yeah,
Marine Corps.
So I am 17. So I had to take my mom to sign up because I was underage. So she had to sign the okay form for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's crying. Your dad was in the Navy. He'd be so upset. Yeah.
What are you thinking during this time? For you, I mean, obviously there's no choice in your mind. You're going to go Marine Corps is what it sounds like. But what's going on in your mind?
Well, all I cared about was driving my 53 Plymouth and dating Jan. That's all I cared about, And, I didn't care about school that much. I really didn't do well in school until I got in college and was married, and I did very well in college. So off I go into the Marine Corps, and the Cuban conflict was on.
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy had just gotten killed, and a lot was happening in this nation. We saw the beginnings of the domestic terrorism through the Weather Underground and so many others. Organizations, I could name dozens of them because I worked that for so many years in police work. And they came to us the day we were going to leave, take our first leave from boot camp. And we had a week off, and then we had to show up at Camp Pendleton at San Onofre. And they came to all of us and said, okay, you guys are all 2-year reserves. You've put in for MOS's military, what you're going to do in the military. And I wanted to go to recon. I wanted to go to jump school and do that. And so there was one in San Bernardino, and they were going to assign me to that. And they said, it's not happening now. You're all in the 6-month reserves, and you're going to go back to where you signed in, and that's where you'll be assigned until we activate you to go to. And nobody knew about this country at this point, Vietnam.
Uh-huh.
And we trained when I was at Camp Pendleton with Vietnamese Marines, and phenomenal men, harder than nails, toughest group of people I've ever been with.
Wow.
Oh, they were phenomenal. Anyway, so we got out, and of course, our whole reserve unit was considered, the West Coast, Southwest Coast Marine Corps Reserve was considered the most active reserve unit in the nation.
So when you say you got out, you mean you got out of boot camp, all your training's done,
Yeah.
and now you're sent back to
The reserve
the
station.
reserve station, ready to be deployed, however the government wants to send you.
Yeah, and so it's 1965, and the riots break out in L.A. We're on Alameda Street in Compton.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hearing all this happen, right? But we just got activated to go to Vietnam. So we're all signing, insurance papers and everything for our family, and we're all packing, and they're giving us extra gear because once we load this gear, we're on a plane to Vietnam.
Wow.
And
I can't even imagine that as a young man. I mean, I can't imagine, especially what you described as a country that you didn't even know existed prior to them telling you what it was.
exactly, and I was exactly 21 years old and married.
Oh, okay. We missed a part of the story then. We'll go back to...
Well, I captured her, so I think I married her when she was 14.
How old were you when you guys got married?
She was 18, and I was 20.
Okay.
And so it was the following year.
Yeah.
So we're all set, ready to go. Let's get to it. I'm kind of jazzed about it, so I'm taking my squad. I was a squad leader at the time, and I'm taking my squad over across Alameda to the phones to phone their family and say bye-bye.
Wow.
So here comes down Alameda, truckloads and truckloads of white people, all armed. My whole squad was African American. And we were locked and loaded with M14s. So they drove up, doing everything they could do to irritate these guys. And I said, we're not going across the street. Get back in the compound. So we got back in the compound. We're there. We're all falling asleep, sitting on the floor. And he comes and he says, stand down. We're not getting activated. He says, we're all going to go to Camp Pendleton. We're going to fly down to Coronado. And we're going to train with this new unit called the Navy SEALs. So we got to train, not much, but enough with the
That was a new unit
SEALs.
at that time. Now you say Navy SEALs, everybody knows this is elite warriors.
They really are. They're phenomenal people. And so I had a lot of great experiences, even though I was in the Marines, in the reserves, being in the Marine Corps. And it provided me with a special discipline that I didn't have. Mm-hmm. And I've been fortunate to have that ever since. Mm-hmm. So,
what was their purpose sending you to train with the Navy SEALs instead of sending you off to Vietnam?
well, what had happened is the vice president at that time, and I don't remember why the president was Johnson, was not available, but the vice president said, have the Marines stand down, we're going to activate the Michigan Air Guard. And they began, because they needed them to transport ammunition and gear to Vietnam. So they had to get them there first. And then it was that year that they landed the Marines on the beaches in Vietnam. They actually were a lot of Marines there that had flown in.
Yeah.
But it was one of those news things, so the Marines charging the beach and all that.
Yeah.
So
now you're married.
married.
You're not sure. You're thinking you're going this way. You end up going this way.
Yeah.
Where's God in your life? Are you still at that place of not only am I an apple pie, now I'm a soldier. Of course, I'm a Christian.
Right.
Or have you begun any kind of relationship with God or know Jesus?
No, not at all. I was 23 and wanted to do something with my life.
Yeah.
And I chose the police work, and I went to 27 different departments and applied. And in that time, if you hadn't been in the military, you couldn't apply.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, cops back in the 60s, if you didn't have either a partial degree, and I was working on one at that time, if you didn't have a partial degree or you had been in the military, they didn't want to mess with you because you didn't have the discipline.
Huh.
And they knew if you'd been in the military, you certainly weren't a hippie. And that was those years when the hippies were taking everything over. So the last agency that I went to was Compton PD, and they hired me. And I went to LA County Sheriff's Academy for 3 months. We had a baby by that time. That was Ginny. And she was pregnant with Barry Ann and just about ready to deliver when I went into training, out of the academy. So I was in training out of the academy and loved it, loved every minute of it. Couldn't get enough of it.
How did it compare to your experiences in the Marine Corps? Was it easier?
Well, it was actual combat.
Okay.
It was, in other words, finally I got into the action, so to speak, the pursuits, the shootings. I don't remember a day in my entire career at Compton that myself or the guy I was working with didn't get in a fist fight.
Wow.
We fought. Every arrest resisted. Everything was hate the cops. All the literature posted on, just everybody hated discipline, so to speak. And, of course, it was the end of the 60s, 69, 70, that...
It's a good year for Volkswagens.
It was.
69, 70.
Let me tell you, I
71 gets into the...
I loved those Volkswagens because, they were always dumping dope out of a hole in the floorboard. See? We always pulled the Volkswagen over with 2 cars. The first car made the pullover. The second car stopped and picked up the dope that they were dumping through the floorboard.
And you knew that routine, huh?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it was good times and a lot of...
How many years were you there in Compton then?
4. And I'd been involved in a lot of exchanges of gunfire. And things were dramatically changing for officer-involved shootings. At that point, the Attorney General said, I don't want an officer involved in a shooting. I don't want his department to do the investigation. It has to go to another agency. Well, I had been involved in a lot of shootings, more shootings than most of the guys on the police department. Not because I wanted to, just because I was in the middle of stuff all the time. So I said, I got to do something different. And I was drinking really heavy.
And now you're a father of 2.
Yeah. And you get off work and you go drink. graveyard or swing shift. The bars opened at 6, so you got off at 7. And graveyard, so you went out and drank and went home, went to bed, and then came to work. And I realized this is not working, working for me. And I was lifting really heavy, and it wasn't working for that either.
So it's messing up your.
Oh yeah, it kills the strength. Huh. So a lot of my buddies had gone down to Huntington Beach, and they were building. So I went down, applied, and they hired me. And so the day I was sworn in, it's not like today. I think you've been to a few swear-ins, right?
Yep.
I entered the building, and the sergeant grabbed me and says, "Go upstairs, see the chief." I saw the chief, and he said, "Raise your right hand." It was my right hand. "You're now a policeman."
That was it, huh?
I mean, the badge.
Different day, I guess.
So when I went to Huntington Beach, my chief, who was Robotil at the time, had been a cop in Compton back in the 50s, and before I got there, for sure. And it was the same with him. I walked in the door, and he threw the badge at me. And he said, "You're a wild man. That's why I hired you. All the guys that came before you were wild, and I'm going to hire some more, because the cops we got here now don't know what to do with what we got going on." In those years, early years in the 70s, we had the start of the skinhead movement. We had the Nazi lowriders. Wow. We had Hell's Angels, the vice president of Hell's Angels. We had Hessians in town. We had, homicides going down. Mm-hmm. It was a wild mess. So a bunch of us came out of L.A., Southgate, Linwood, Compton, and LAPD, LA sheriffs came and built that department to what it was when I left. And he said, "You're a wild man. Don't you ever lie to me." He says, "If you do something wrong, you tell me. You may get time off, but I'll keep you out of trouble. Don't you ever lie to me." And I guess he said that to every guy that came out of L.A. So don't you ever lie to me. So, and I still see him periodically. We have breakfast together. He's a great guy. Built a beautiful police department. So, working undercover, 76. I'm drinking heavy.
What'd you look like when you were working undercover?
Well, at this particular point in 76, I was bald. I had a big Fu Manchu, and I was about 286 pounds. I had, typical slicks, what bikers call slicks. Your pants can stand up because they never get washed. And I had the Levi jacket with pockets sewn in it for my guns and stuff. And I had all the Nazi insignias and, all the crap that makes you look like a biker. Mm-hmm. I just didn't have colors. And I worked with a little Mexican guy named Rudy. He just phoned me this afternoon to say Merry Christmas. And we did crazy stuff. Jan had tried to get me to go to Melody Land over and over and over. I'd come home. Generally, Sunday was my only day off. And so I would come home 1 or 2 in the morning. I'd have a fifth of Bushmills and a 6-pack of beer, and I'd sit there and drink till football came on. And then by the time they got out of church, came home, I was in bed sleeping, so I could wake up early Monday morning.
Say by this time you've got 3 girls, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was really bad for Jan. I was hard on her. Mm-hmm. And I was a mean person. Of course, when you drink too much, you get mean.
Well, you're in a violent world. You're seeing the worst of the worst every day.
Yeah. And my friends didn't help. Mm-hmm. Because they loved, when I was off, calling me and saying, "Let's go drink." And because they'd go drink, and I never had any money because I had these 3 little kids. And Jan couldn't work, not because she could or wouldn't, but she just couldn't take care of them. They were all little. And so they'd take me to some place, and they'd tell the bartender, "Hey, he's broke all the time. Give him your mistakes." So I'd be drinking these mistakes, and once I got spinning, they'd know it, and then they'd go get somebody to fight me. They'd say, "That guy said this," or, "Do you know what he thinks about you?" And so the next thing you know, I'm going to fight. It was crazy, so I stopped hanging around with them. And
good move, huh?
Yeah, it was. And I started, once Rudy became my partner, we started hanging around with a lot of gang suppression units and organized crime units throughout Southern California. We did swap meet task forces and stuff like that. But the drinking didn't stop. He and I would go to a bar called Abby's in Long Beach. It's not there anymore.
Which is your granddaughter's name.
Which is my granddaughter's name. And we'd stay there half a day, just drinking before we'd go home. So here we are in 76, and I know something's going on at church because she's looking hot. I mean, really hot, dressing to the nines. Looks good, okay? So she tells me about this ex-Marine minister who stutters. That didn't work on. And this Jewish guy that's his partner, and they have the young marrieds class. And you're just going to love the guy that leads the worship there, Tom Wood. And so I go, right? This young married, I got to do this. I got to do something.
How old are you at this time?
30, so we're talking 76, so I'm 32.
Okay.
And I'm looking at all this, and everybody's happy, and sure enough, this big old guy stutters, and so does Tom, unless he's singing. And here's this Jew preaching Christ, and I said, I just can't believe this. I don't know, this is racking my mind. So the drinking didn't stop. Things were working on me. So it was the year that we first did Touch Felt Around the World. Jeannie was 10, and she played the little cripple girl that got healed in it, and Honor Crouch was the singer.
Let everybody know what that is, because those were big productions, right? I wasn't around for them.
We had Disney people that went to our church that set everything up for these, and the Touch Felt Around the World actually traveled the United States and ministered in many, many churches. And it was the Azusa Street Revival thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
telling the story of the Azusa Street Revival?
Telling the story of the Azusa Street Revival. Oh. So I had been going to church periodically, sitting at the back, wearing my outlaw clothes. And the first time I went to church, not the marriage class, but the church, Ralph got up and started calling out healings.
He's the pastor.
Ralph
leader of the
Wilkerson,
church.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Ralph Wilkerson got up, started calling out healings. So I stood up, and here's my wife and my little blondies right there. And I went as loud as I can shout, and I can shout really loud. Yeah. BS! Only I didn't say BS.
Really?
Yeah. So I walked right past this guy called Fred Putz.
Wait, how many people are in the room when you do this? I mean, because I remember that theater in the round. It's a large. That was like a mega church. A lot of people around.
1,000.
Yeah,
easily 1,000 or
so
more.
at that gathering, more than 1,000 people, and you've had enough.
Nobody heard.
Really?
Nobody turned around. Nobody blinked an eye.
Huh.
Fred Putz, and you probably wouldn't remember, was a big old guy, big bear-like guy who worked our aisle, said, God bless you, brother. Come back again, patting me on the back, and I walk out, and they're walking out behind me. So I went home, tied one on, went to work the next day. And here we come. Well, I'll tell you about another.
Yeah.
The second time I went, we went to the second service because they'd all gone to Sunday school, and we'd gone to the young marriage class. We're waiting to get in, and as the people come out, this guy, bigger than I, grabs me, puts his arms around me. He says, Barry, I've been praying for you. I love you, Barry. And I'm trying to get my gun out to shoot him, thinking, what the? He said, come on, I'm going to sit in church with you. He'd been one of my partners at Compton, became a Christian, and was running a Christian school out in the desert, and I can't think of the name of the little town. One of my other partners used to live there too, but just blues. And he died a year later of pneumonia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. So there were some signals there.
Yeah.
Mentally I'm it's changing things, changing part of my thinking. And here comes the clinic. The clinic was a week long, and you could go to church 24/7. And you would attend classes. You had to sign up for them, so they knew how many people were going to be there and so forth. And so I'm going to a few of the classes, but I'm working also. So during this,
Wait, why are you going to the classes? Because now you're interested, or are you
because
skeptical?
Jan was there, and I thought something was going on between her and one of the ministers.
So you're keeping an eye on your wife,
Yeah.
and you're not believing what you're seeing.
No, and by this time she's working in the Overcomers, which is the handicap. She worked paid work
Yeah.
there, and I had come home to have lunch one day, and I couldn't find any peanut butter, I think. So I phoned and I said, I'm coming over there and I'm grabbing you and you're going with me and you're going to buy me some peanut butter. That's how the sick mind I had going on.
Yeah.
So I get there and I'm walking down in all my brilliance and glory. And out of the Overcomers comes Millie and Ruth Ann. Okay. Now I had met them kind of. And so Ruth Ann grabs my right arm, and I don't think she knew that's my gun arm, so she better hold it. And Millie comes up to me and starts speaking in tongues, put her hand in the middle of my chest, and keeps hitting me like this.
Some courageous women.
And I'm going, what? And I'm just in shock, and I'm thinking, I'm going to knock them out, And Ruth's praying for me, praying and holding on to my arm. And I kind of like went, I give up. I went out and got in my car and went to work. Last Sunday of the week, is the Touch Found Around the World, and they do it 2 or 3 times in a day, I think, if I remember correct. And so I was in the crowd when Ralph gave an altar call. Bam.
Straight up.
Straight up.
Wow.
Straight up, I
What a buildup.
tore me up.
Yeah.
Was supposed to.
Yeah.
But things got worse. Yeah. So I'm trying to kick the habit, right? Trying to work on that. God's given me grace, helping me with it too.
Can I just ask you, though, at that moment, I'm just thinking about all the things leading up to that.
Yeah.
How God works in our lives just to get you to show up, even though you're skeptical.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could have stood up and screamed what you screamed, and then they'd say, we don't want you here, and kick you out forever. Nobody says anything. Guy welcomes you to stay.
Right.
And then you have this outburst. You go see your wife. You get prayed for by 2 crazy, charismatic women who love Jesus so much and that they're not afraid of you, which had to feel weird.
It did.
Yeah, and then you see your 10-year-old daughter on stage. Getting healed. But also wasn't, and so she's a part of this production that just touches your heart.
Oh.
Man, what a wise God.
Oh. But it did get bad.
Yeah.
Because Jan comes to me and she says, I want you to go to school. I've already graduated from Cal State. So I want you to go to school of theology. We had a fight. Almost a knockdown, drag-out fight over it. I said, Jan, God's got too many crazy ministers out there. I'm not going to be another one.
You thinking about like just your experiences growing up in church, or
well, but there was a lot of attacks on churches.
Yeah,
because there were a lot of strange churches going on at that time.
Weird stuff happening.
Absolutely. And so I said, I'm a cop. Up comes this meeting with John. We would go over there because they lived very close to us at that time. And we would go over there and he would talk to me. He said, you really need to go to school of theology. So I go, fill it out. Got to have a certain amount of money, right? I didn't have that kind of money. Here's an envelope in a mailbox with that money in it. So I started the School of Theology, and I stayed with it until we all left Milliland.
So John, who you were talking to, is John Cairns.
John Cairns,
He was the Marine that had a stutter.
Right.
He put all the pieces together as Ruth Ann's husband, who was a part of the founding pastoral team of this church.
Right.
Yeah.
As was Millie.
Yep.
And So John calls me over, and he's having a meeting with the intern ministers. He says, I want you to tell these guys about your life and all that and everything. So it's all, and you know how John, I don't know if you ever noticed or if he ever did it to you, but if he wanted you to stay, didn't want you to get up and go or whatever, he'd grab you and hold you. You could be standing. Most of the time, he'd grip me when I'm sitting because he'd make me sit next to him. And so they're dismissing, they're leaving, and Ruth Ann is there, and Jan's talking to Ruth Ann, and he grabs me. So they're all gone, and we had prayed, everybody's going, and so he looks at me, he says, I want you to become an intern minister. Oh, no, John, you're nuts. You don't need me there, okay? He says, I want you to become an intern minister. I want you there Sunday morning for the intern meeting, and I'm going to give you an assignment. That's it. So I became this intern minister, right? And he says, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, again, how much that would have worked for you. You're talking Marine to Marine, that you're not going to be able to respond to a guy who's like, hey, just maybe go home and pray about and see if you feel like you want to be an intern minister. You needed somebody who was going to tell you this is what you're going to do.
And you got to remember how big John was.
Oh, yeah.
He was a young man at this time. He was in his late 40s, early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by now, I'm born again, and so I'm at work, and I'm saying, maybe it's time for me to get out of this undercover business. Mm. So I got a graveyard squad so I could study at night. And I was still a patrolman at the time, so I was working the front desk at night because we were open 24/7 then. And I would do my theology homework there at night, and that worked out good. But this intern stuff, just, I don't know about that, right? So we go to the meeting. He says, I'm going to give you your assignments for the week. He says, Barry, when you get here tonight, you're going to work baptismals. I said, okay. And so he takes me back and he says, look, this is a charismatic church, and the Holy Spirit touches people when they're under the influence, out of the influence. It touches streetwalkers, it touches pimps. They will come in here, get saved, and they want to be baptized. Okay? So I want you to understand that. And there are miracles here. Well, then we would have baptism every Sunday night after church. We had this giant baptismal set right out in front.
I was a little kid
Yeah.
when my parents took me to that church, and I remember, that's the one thing I remember is the big plexiglass.
Yeah.
I remember because you could see all the way through the water.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so we would have anywhere from 75 to 100 people being baptized every Sunday night. Danny, I baptized prostitutes that would go under the water, come up smelling clean and being clean. People that were limping, get out of that baptismal. I saw miracle after miracle after miracle. I know that miracles are real today because of what I saw, those experiences, and are going to be happening soon again. There's a movement of God to try and reach out to people because they're so stubborn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, because in your story, you're going forward for an altar call, and I see that you got kind of emotional when you were even thinking about that moment, but things were still bad. What changed over the time? Because there's something in between you going to the altar call, things are a little bad, but now you're studying theology. At what point did you find that your life was being transformed, that you were changing?
I think right then. Is the realization that I had not been born again. No matter how smart I thought I was, the faith in God, who God was put in there, of course, at the beginning of time, but by my grandparents and my mom. And my mom and dad were both alcoholics and smoked and violent. They were violently passionate and violent with each other, so I lived with that. And, of course, learning that from the womb, I was a violent young man and sought out violence. So I knew that, and I knew that had to change. So the best thing that happened after being baptized was the fact that I was a cop in Huntington Beach, so that I could change. I wouldn't have the violence that I had at Compton. And it came slow, and I'm still changing.
Well, I just asked the question because I think some people have like this dramatic conversion where they accept Jesus and then all of a sudden they feel like a different person. It sounds like you accept Jesus and you continue to grow.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's obviously a dramatic moment where you say yes to him,
Yeah.
but you're still working things out for
Oh,
several years and into studying theology, and it's messy, and you're in a church that accepts you because they see Jesus at work in you, and you're with a pastor who says, yeah, I know you got these things going on, but I'm going to still impart to you wisdom and give you opportunities to minister and so forth. So is that kind of the environment, or am I words in your mouth?
That is.
Yeah.
Things weren't easy. They were never easy because that old self, I mean, you've been hanging around with these guys with language like the Marines have and the Navy has. And when you stop at doing that, they're looking at you different, Not that they stopped caring about me or being my friends, but things did change, and they saw that change. And that's the biggest thing in law enforcement. These guys that I'd worked with saw a change and knew that it was real.
Yeah.
And I was thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you're going through school of theology. How many years did you do that?
4
years.
Yeah.
And you're an intern minister.
Right.
And your assignments are baptizing people. Is there any other things that Pastor John gave for you to do, or experiences that you had as an intern minister?
Yeah. Because I was a cop, they sent all the druggies, the prostitutes, for me to pray for.
Uh-huh.
And because I was a cop, we would get, for instance, we got, what was his name, Janet? Jerry Lee Lewis? No.
Was it Little Richard? I remember.
Little Richard,
I remember
yeah.
hearing stories about Little
It
Richard.
was little Richard, And Little Richard wasn't little. He was a big guy. And so I was with him all day there to keep people away. And
So you're the intern minister security.
right,
Head of security guy.
yeah, like that. So, and it was, I learned a lot more because of those experiences than if I'd just been doing teaching a class.
Yeah.
I was already teaching anyway. I had my teaching credential. I was teaching at Golden West College. So I was doing all these things all the time, pushed in
Yeah.
to one life.
Yeah. That's a lot.
It is. It was.
You said that the guys at work saw something different in you, and I know just from knowing you, those guys still call you. You've done weddings, you've done memorial services. You relate with those guys like nobody else can.
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
Well, in 84, 85, I wanted to go full-time in the ministry. And I told John, I said, I really want to go to full-time. But we came here in 84. And the door just didn't open. It wasn't that he didn't answer that. He didn't say, okay, let's do this. He says, you just keep praying on it. Just keep praying on it. Because he knew that somewhere down that road, I would have some influence on the men that I'd been with for so long.
Maybe it was full-time ministry, just not what you thought it was going to look like.
Yeah, it was. And several agencies. I mean, a lot of Garden Grove cops that knew me undercover had become Christians also and would have me visit their church. And it was a good life. It was good. It was a lot of fun during those years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now, I know there comes a point in your law enforcement career where you're getting close to retirement age, you're looking at different things to do. How was that for you? I mean, we're going through a lot of life here, but what was that like?
It was traumatic. I didn't want to retire. In fact, I did an article we had a department magazine that came out every other month. It's called Justice for All. They don't no longer publish it, but they interviewed me about, are you ever going to retire? And I said, no. I said, you're going to find me in my supervisor's car somewhere, slumped over the steering wheel. I'm going out. I'm going to see Jesus in uniform. And that didn't happen. I did retire. And that was hard. My chief at that time, a guy named Kenneth Small, during that time, we went to Africa, if you remember, in 85. Yeah. 2005. He phones me and he says, you're not doing good. I said, no. He said, want to come back to work part-time? I went back to work part-time for 14 years. So I was in the job for 50 years.
50 years.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a calling in and of itself, though. I mean, I'm just curious how you look at that, because I think sometimes when people come to know Christ, they think that the ultimate is that you become a pastor. Like somehow we have this in our mind that, if you're a really, really good Christian and you're called of God, you study and you become a pastor.
Right.
Where it seems that your life, that God had a different plan. And I think for so many, he hasn't called. If everybody was pastors, how would we be the body of Christ, right?
Exactly.
So he calls you. Do you see that now, looking back, that this wasn't just something you were interested in, but that God called you to be a police officer?
I do. You know that I was involved in several situations that a lot of cops retire out of because they can't handle it. But God, and especially studying Hebrew at the Meliland, it was already worked out in my mind, but I realized God had already worked it out. Okay? Because there's a difference in murder and a difference in taking a life, because you have to. And I've been reading a book. It's a study guide on Deuteronomy, very good one, by a guy you like a lot. In fact, you mention him a lot, and I can't think of his name. And I ran into that when Moses is telling the children that are now going to go into the Promised Land what the difference was, and when God told them to take these towns and obliterate them, okay?
Yeah.
What the difference in what that was and what the difference in murder was.
Oh, yeah.
There's two separate words.
What a tough thing. Yeah.
And because he was telling him to do it because it was judgment time for those people, and that was it. And so I realized, and I used to think, well, I've never been upset about these things that happen. I've never had this trauma, no PTSD, so to speak, because I had taken a life. And it must have been built in me from the get-go, from my Pentecostal grandpa I had.
Yeah. So now you're looking, you retire, you go back for 14 years, just keep working, and I know you're still working.
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
I'm team security for the LA Chargers, but I only work the facility when they're working out or where they're practicing, to keep people away from the practice and to make sure their wives don't visit them and that kind of, their girlfriends show up, and they do. They'll show up and try and get on the property.
Yeah.
It's an interesting job.
You enjoy it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But I'm just 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And during the season.
So what do you do when you're not taking care of the Chargers, and what do you like to do for fun or for just because you can?
Take my wife out to lunch. Or dinner. When we leave here, we're going to go out to dinner tonight.
That's cool.
Yeah. I'll take her to Jack in the Box or something, one of those.
Something fancy?
Oh.
I've been in your garage before.
Yeah.
There's lots of weights in there.
Yeah.
So what do you I was just talking to you about this before we started doing the podcast.
Yeah.
And you work out a lot.
I've been recalcitrant the last couple of weeks because of everything that's going on, the build up to go to Christmas and everything at the Charger Center. So I haven't been in there, but I will be back in there lifting. Yeah. I've given a lot of my weights away. I'm never going to be the lifter I was, but
I know you have some records and things, don't you? Powerlifting records, and there's a lot that people don't know about Barry Case.
Well, not sanctioned by the AEU, because some of the lifts I did were not power lifts. They were power lifts, but they weren't part of the 3 power lifts.
Okay.
And I used to challenge my buddy, who was a world record holder for many years in powerlifting. I used to challenge him to a 350-pound shoulder press from the back of your shoulder. But he had to sit down to do it. Well, he could do it standing up, but he couldn't do it sitting down, and I could. So I used to beat him at that. But he bench pressed unbelievable. He's the first guy that broke 2,100 pounds in all 3 lifts.
Wow. Yeah. What was your max bench press at your peak?
I think at my peak I was in the middle 4s. Yeah. Never see that again.
I used to bench press the bar. That's 45 pounds, right? Yeah. And then you put the 2 bigger 35 plates on there, or 45 plates in my peak. I was doing that, no problem, Barry.
You skinny kids have a lot of strength.
Well, it's a long way up with long arms. I got these freakishly long arms. That's more the issue. It's not strength. It's the distance.
Yeah, one of the kids that worked for me as a cadet and retired before I did, skinny kid. He used to come into the gym and work out with us. But he'd do aerobic things. Slide on. I said, Kevin, come over and bench press for me. So I put 140 pounds on it. And bam, he's knocking him out. And so I said, oh, really? And he's skinny. So I put 50 more pounds on there. And he's knocking him out, pumping him like that. And I'm going, Kevin, you're too skinny to do that. But it's
judge a book by the cover, huh?
No, you can't. But you learn that there's muscle and tendon strength, and you can have muscles and tendons that are built for that.
Yeah.
Where some people have to struggle to get to that point to lift like that. So it was always a struggle for me. I was big and slow, so lifting heavy was a struggle.
Yeah.
That's why I did it every day.
Yeah. Well, I was just, as we kind of wrap up, I'm looking and thinking about your life and many different turns that God brought and things that would potentially have been traumatic for somebody. But you seem to have a extra gene there to be able to handle difficult things and that you're able to endure things so that other people don't have to. You know, you're able to serve in that way. And as you look back over your life and the way that God was weaving things through from grandparents and uncles that had influence on you, even when you didn't know the Lord, you knew about Him to the point where you come to know Christ and then grow in your faith, formally trained, and then continue out your calling in law enforcement. It's just a fascinating interweavings of what the Holy Spirit was doing in your life. And from where you sit now, what are some things that you would share with another generation, a generation that's coming up, maybe those that want to follow Christ but are in a vocation, in a particular job, and and maybe they have aspirations towards ministry, or I think about, and what I'm hearing in your story is you thought God was doing one thing, but He's doing something else. Mm-hmm. What have you learned about that? What would you say to somebody in a similar situation?
I would say wait on God to make it obvious that where you want to go is where you want to go.
Yeah.
Don't make a snap decision. Pray and have your friends and your family praying, not for a specific purpose, but pray for God to reveal His purpose for what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Because you could mess up a whole lot of people and your family by jumping into something that you think, because you think this is where I want to go.
Yeah.
And this is what I want to do.
Yep.
You got to get the I out of it. It's got to be about God and not about you.
Yeah.
So.
I was thinking of that verse, if you want to be great in God's kingdom, you got to learn to be a servant.
That's right.
A servant of all. And sometimes we get ambitious in ministry, or ambitious thinking, and it could be a selfish ambition. We don't even know that, right? That the I is very very present, and we want to do certain things. But from what I can, and I know of you and hear in your life, is that you chose what God wanted.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe I did.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's coming, what's happening. Mm-hmm. I pray for healing on some areas that you know about in my body. Mm-hmm. And I'm lucky I did the weightlifting that I did, or I don't know that I'd be able to do what I do now.
Yeah.
So God keeps revealing different things to me, just like that. Yeah. You'll say something, Somebody else will say something. You know, you're ministering up here, but you think you're ministering to everybody, but you're really ministering to me. And God tells me, see, telling you, wait.
Yeah. Right on.
One of John's favorite passages was, those who wait on the Lord will be lifted up on the wings of eagle. He loved that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I love the rest of that too. They run and they're not weary, and they walk and they're not faint. And yeah, I want to thank you, Barry. I want to thank you for opening up your story to us, and I hope that people who know you and have seen you around here get to know you a little bit better by watching this. But that's my prayer for you, that as you're waiting on the Lord, He's not done with you. He's not done with any of us, that you're going to mount up with wings like an eagle. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.